So as Bill Toronto said this morning, I'm involved with the Women's Health Tech Initiative, so very happy to be here in support of that day to day. But this topic is a little bit different. We're focusing today on frontier technologies and how we look at investing in this space with regards to frontier technologies and emerging business models. There will be forward-looking statements here. Nothing in this deck really should be construed as an investment advice. Really what we're trying to do here today is talk to you about how we look at this space and start a dialogue about ideas that you might have, how we look at and evaluate companies in this space, as well as some of the thematic areas that we think might be compelling here. So the Merck Global Health Innovation Fund was founded in 2010 by Bill Toronto, who you heard from this morning, as a way for Merck to invest outside of its core pharmaceuticals business. We invest out of a $500 million evergreen fund, and we've evergreened that fund several times over the past 13 years or so, making over $1 billion of capital investments in over 70 companies with more than $7 billion in exits. And the goal of this really is to support and develop things outside the core pharmaceuticals business. So we focus on digital health, healthcare IT. We don't invest in molecular therapies, although I'm coming back to that in a second. We recognize, though, that there was a need that existed between traditional health tech and traditional biotech. And one of the areas we wanted to explore, and an area that I started a couple years ago, is the Next Horizon Fund within the GHI Fund. And the goal of this fund was really to look at and explore technologies that could be disruptive to Merck and the health and life sciences industries over the next 3 to 5 years. It's a relatively small allocation of the GHI fund, but I think it punches above its weight with regards to its capital allocation. But really the goal here is to understand technologies invested in, support these things that could really fundamentally change the pharma value chain, could transform the way we think about healthcare delivery, and how we could accelerate concerns related to enterprise IT. And so far, we've made investments across the spectrum from synthetic biology like ABSCI, looking at ways to engineer proteins, natural products in the macrocyclic molecule space, all the way through to even quantum computing. We're looking to add to this portfolio actively and in fact constantly evaluating new investments in the space. And what have we learned so far? So large companies hunger for innovation but need near-term successes. So we see this within our own company, within Merck. We see this within other large biopharma, biotech, life sciences companies, and healthcare companies. People are familiar and hunger for these innovations, and I think it was surprising for us to understand how, there's always going to be someone within an organization that can understand these bleeding-edge technologies. So if you are a leader within those large corporations, please listen to your folks that might be contemplating this on a day-to-day basis. They know and are familiar with these technologies. And if you're a startup, you really need to help and find these people to get near-term successes, right? Because I think that as these technologies, even though they're looking at sort of a 3 to 5 year horizon, there need to be interim ways for them to work with large corporates in the next few years to get some quick wins. We've noticed that investors really need to innovate their own models, right? So more often than not that we see, and because we invest in these gray spaces between tech and biotech and these areas, we see that investors often work in silos. So you have your biotech person, your tools person, your services person, your biotech person. And so if there are ways to collaborate across those different pillars, we think that would support this ecosystem and is a much needed advancement. And that's partially why we started the Next Horizon area. And ultimately, I think this was mentioned in the last talk as well, healthcare is not just a tech problem. We need real business models and partnerships to accelerate these technologies and bring them to places where patients are. And so where we are now with regards to looking at this Next Horizon technology area. So what this is the stock indices performance indexed to January 1, 2020, the before times. And the way we look at this is a composite between the NASDAQ 100 Technology Index, the S&P 500, S&P 500 Healthcare Index, which is represented in the light gray, a broad-based market index like the Russell 3000 against the NASDAQ Biotech Index. And certainly there's some high correlations in the first part of the graph, but we see starting in maybe 2022 a bifurcation between the performance of high tech and biotech, with biotech still underperforming over the past few years. And so largely that's due to the Fed interest rate increases, which started in 2022, but also the passage of the IRA Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, which had some provisions which caused some drawbacks within the biotech space. And so what do we take away from this image? So when we're looking at frontier technologies, those are high duration assets that are sort of similar to biotech in certain ways. And so if there are ways for us to shorten the duration of these assets, as I mentioned, finding those quick wins and looking at ways for us to get interim successes and markers along the way would be really important. There are signs of a tech resurgence, so there's some signs for optimism there with regards to where technologies could be going. And then the IPO market is still rocky after the underperformance of some of the recent IPOs over the past year or so. And anecdotally, what we've seen in the early stage market is that valuations are becoming a lot more attractive in this half of the year and probably going into next year as well. So even though that there are some broad market risks to be aware about and to be cautious of, we think that there are signs of optimism in the market, and so we're still looking to deploy capital in this space. So what areas are we looking at? So platforms are important for us. And the way that we think about platforms here is that if we're investing in areas like quantum computing, areas that could be really groundbreaking, but there are multiple different technologies that could win the day in the end, we want to look at platforms that can work with a number of those different technology solutions. And so our goal here with platforms is to make a bet that would have multiple entrances to that area. So pod computing is a great example of that. It's a quantum computing orchestration platform which we invested in. That works across multiple quantum hardware solutions. So as the quantum future approaches, they're well positioned to work across that industry. The other piece that we like to look at is enabling technologies. So the greatest example here that we can think of most recently is probably NVIDIA's support of generative AI. So generative AI requires a type of processor, GPUs, which NVIDIA is one of the main suppliers of. And so you can see that one of the biggest winners so far and the most immediate winners of generative AI has been companies that enable generative AI to succeed in the current market. So we're looking at technologies that enable these highly disruptive technologies in the future as well. And then lastly, we think about data creators. We talked about, the last talk mentioned about how data is biased within the current healthcare system. And so we believe that as solutions like generative AI and others become more prominent, data will become even more valuable, right? If we have large access to large unbiased pools of data that will be able to fuel things like generative AI and other solutions as well. But what do we look at for companies that work in these spaces, right? So we mentioned that the solutions need to address large areas of unmet clinical and technical needs, I would say. So we're looking for big picture solutions that could really change the way healthcare is looked at in the current model. We look to business models that yield clinical data and insights, right? So again, creating that virtuous cycle of data and insights that could feed the next horizon of healthcare companies. And we still look at operational evidence, right? We talk about things like commercial revenue as traction, cash burn, and profitability as a way to understand near-term success and close that duration gap that we talked about earlier. And so far, these are the areas that we've identified. We'd love to add to this list. Within the biopharma space, we've talked about tech platforms, enabling technologies, supply chain, which my colleague Joe Volpe talked about, I think, yesterday, commercialization, healthcare delivery. What could fundamentally change the way that we get healthcare, anything from precision medicine to remote healthcare. We also are looking at underserved communities of care as well. So looking at women's health, LGBTQ health as areas and business models that could disrupt the way healthcare delivery is made, starting with these populations that have a real health need. And we're looking at enterprise technology solutions that could be ported into healthcare, right? So the health and life sciences industry is not known for being first adopters of technologies. And so to the extent that we can invest to bring some of those technologies into health and life sciences, the better I think we'll see the progression of the whole industry. With that, we've also started an initiative as a joint collaboration between Merck corporate parent, Merck GHI, the Merck GHI Fund, North Pond Ventures, McKesson Ventures, Microsoft for Startups, and GIT as well, to start looking at even earlier companies. So we're now in our second year. We just announced our second cohort of companies. And so we're trying to expand the aperture of companies that we're looking at from our traditional kind of early to mid-stage venture to even earlier, looking at pre-Series A and seed-based startups. And so I encourage you to go to mds.studio to find out more about these great companies. And if you are a startup, we're looking for applications all the time. We'll probably start next year in terms of our next cohort of companies. Those are the slides I wanted to go through today. Thank you so much for your time. If you liked what I said, if you hated what I said, would love to have a talk about any thoughts that you have on the space. We'd love to work on this together with all of you in the room. Thank you.